What if the speed of light was 30 miles an hour?
What if Earth had two suns?
Which cereal mascot would win in a fight?
What if everyone lived underground?
What if it
What
rained
if money grew on
What
trees?
if pigs could fly?
I don't know if that would actually happen.
It's much easier to store a unicycle than to store a horse.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show where we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host, Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee and Ben Storms. Say hi, guys.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Ben.
Guys, today we are doing a throwback episode. You might be asking, what the heck's that? I'll tell you what that is if you don't have enough context clues. What we are doing is we have answered lots and lots of crazy hypothetical questions over the course of this podcast. And sometimes we look back and we're like, man, I got something better. Let me give me a gimme on that one. I got something else, or I got something new, or I want to take this from a new angle that I couldn't fit in the first time. So we have each gone back and selected a different hypothetical question from our past to recreate a fresh new answer for.
It's a chance for us to correct our mistakes or...
Oh no, we're not correcting any mistakes. It's ignoring what we've done in the past is always perfect.
Yeah, sure.
Usually it's addressing something where we...
That we regret.
Yeah, how did we not do blank?
I mean, we had a whole section of our show where we put in half the amount of effort for every question.
Right, yeah.
That is true. And what Chris means is that we used to do 2 hypothetical questions per episode and squeeze them both in.
Squaz them.
Squaz.
Yeah.
We squipped those in all together, and we had shorter answers with a little bit less depth, so now we can always go back and do a bit more. But I feel like I'm gonna get this train rolling because we have lots of questions to go through. So what I went back and did was episode 61. What if all sports were in zero gravity? And we've done a lot of episodes reinventing sports under different conditions, and for some reason, I always end up doing water polo. I convert water polo into all these crazy hypotheticals. I think I just like pools. But I didn't do it for zero-G sports, and I am here to rectify that particular situation because...
Have you ever played water polo?
Heck no. I don't even know most of the rules still.
I just want to say the most brazen of your make sport into blank answers, the most water polo was the one where it was doing sports in pools. You still did water polo.
Yeah, but I did polo in water. Anyway, water polo, it's zero-G. And this is the reason I'm back, because the first and obvious thing is, let's start with the water. Water polo is played in a pool. For those of you who don't know what water polo is, it's basically soccer, except people are swimming around and they throw the ball with their hands. There's a net on either end, and you're kind of just treading water the whole time and passing a ball around and, trying to throw it into the net. So what happens to a pool in zero gravity? Because it doesn't, of course, nicely stay down, because that's what gravity is for. And yes, this is at the point at which I wasted almost all my research time looking at astronauts doing cool tricks with water on the ISS and similar in zero gravity. So without gravity, the water has no reason to stay in the nice rectangular pool and will just float around. Without gravity, the next strongest force that's going to start dictating what our water looks like is going to be surface tension. So just the water holds itself together at its surface. It's what makes like little droplets and bubbles and all those things. The water's surface tension in zero gravity will cause it to kind of slowly clump together into floating spheres. So it kind of looks like the most energy efficient shape it can be. And given the water tension, it makes it a sphere. So if you like throw water around in a space shuttle, it'll make little different size spheres of water. Eventually they'll all come together, so our playing field would theoretically look like a giant floating sphere of water, which you could swim in, by the way. I was looking into if you'd be able to like swim in water in zero gravity, and there's really not any issues because you're just kind of pushing against a fairly dense thing to get momentum. So yeah, the water will be pushed back, but you could definitely swim in it.
You wouldn't like float in it, right? You'd just be in the middle of it?
You would float in it in that you're also in zero gravity. The gravity of the water ball is not going to be enough to impact you. Like a pool-sized amount of water does not have its own gravitational pull. Even in zero gravity, that would be like significant.
Well, I mean, there's not going to be like a buoyant force.
Yes, there's no buoyant force, because the buoyant force would be generated by the pressures of water from gravity and the weight of the water being displaced by I'm going to skip that explanation. Because I realized I would have to go back like 3 more steps to actually explain it, and I'm not going that far in. But as cool as this is, our sphere of water would not last very long once the game started. Because while the surface tension is cool, and in these like zero gravity environments, it's not actually going to keep the ball together if there's anything else going on. The surface tension strength of water is pretty weak. You just go right through water. You sink in it. You break the surface very easily. And just because there's no other forces, it doesn't make the surface tension any stronger. So once your players start moving around and swimming, this sphere is going to be very quickly destroyed, and your pool's worth of water will be flying everywhere in different sized globs and globules and, bouncing all around the place. This is a problem. Astronaut Luca Parmitano can attest to that. He was on a spacewalk, and there was an issue with his coolant where it was slowly leaking into his helmet. So what happened is the way the space helmets are designed is that there's like the big dome helmet, and right behind your head, there's like this plate headrest, like this plastic plate headrest sort of thing, slightly off the back of the helmet that you kind of rest your head against. And the oxygen and the air comes up from behind that plate, shoots upwards, so it goes around the helmet in front of your face. So what was happening was that the coolant was getting into the air that was coming in, and the liquid droplets were slowly building up on the back of the head plate, because while water likes to make spheres, the other things it likes to do is it does actually get sticky on surfaces in zero gravity, because it's a dome on a flat surface is more energy efficient than the sphere, so water actually gets kind of tacky. Like you can see if they like wring out a towel in space, the water that comes out will actually like collect on their hands and not go anywhere else. Like it'll stay stuck to that surface.
It's like a similar force to why there's surface tension, right? Like from water to water.
Yeah, it has to deal with the ions having a charge, and that lets them, attract to other surfaces and hold together, and, lots of little, like, down to a molecular level, things like to hold together. So what happened was with these water droplets from this air kept slowly building up on the back of his head plate, and it likes to run across that surface, so as it built up more, and not like, it doesn't fill the helmet from the bottom up, it builds on the back plate and then slowly started encroaching on his head, like covering his ears and going to, threatening to cover his eyes and his nose. And so like, he could have drowned in there with like an inch of water on his face. End of the story, he was fine. They canceled his spacewalk, they brought him in, they took care of it, and it was not a problem. But it shows the problem we would have if we just have a bunch of dudes, floating around, bumping into water droplets all the time. They're going to build up on your face and surfaces, and you're just going to eventually have like a little film of water on you that could potentially drown you. Again, it's all surface tension forces, so it's kind of easy to brush off the water if it happens, but it's going to be kind of a constant threat, and it's going to be tricky to avoid doing that. So what I think we need to do is you can't just go through a pool's worth of water and just always deal with it bouncing around. So what I think we need is some structure for the water to more favorably cling to rather than just be loose in the air. So let's keep the sphere shape because that's just cool. But the way we're going to structure it is we're going to have basically a series of wires to build the sphere and separate it into like a series of like honeycomb shapes, if you can follow what I'm picturing, where it's just kind of like a spider web of medium spaced wires that the water can now collect on, and what it'll do is it'll create almost walls of water, like almost like a bubble wand, where you'll be able to have the surface tension create flat surfaces attracted to the wires, and you'll have less floating water all around. Also, I think it'd be cool because it might open up some like strategic elements of like which water walls to break through as you navigate through this honeycomb sphere of stuff. So we kind of have our field. It fixes the, not drowning portion of our sport. But now, if we're not swimming through water, because it's hanging on our wires instead of on our faces, how do we get around? There are a lot of options here. So I'm going to start with some stuff I did, like jetpacks, or just, grabbing onto the wires and propelling yourself, things of that nature. But I think part of the spirit of water polo is that you can only move so quickly, and it is extremely tiring to do so over the course of the whole game.
The fact that I would die playing it for like a minute.
Yeah, exactly. This is only for real athletes who like actually do cardio. So with that in mind, I'm going to skip to the conclusion, then tell you why it's great. I have chosen the best method of transportation, zero gravity, the Airzuka. If you don't know what the Airzuka is, it is that children's toy that consists of this big barrel-like gun, and on the back of it, it has an elastic like diaphragm with a knob that you pull and you release, and it shoots out a big puff of wind. So they're actually pretty cool. Have you guys ever played with one?
I have. I actually didn't know that's what it was called.
I think the brand name one is Airzuka, and then there's like, all the knockoffs.
I've always been fascinated, but never actually played with one, unfortunately.
They do a better job than you would think. Like, the one they use, like, you can blow out a candle at like 40 feet with it, which is honestly pretty impressive. If you don't know what it is, look it up. I can't explain it anymore besides you have a gun that you just use to shoot air around. So, here's why this is brilliant and makes this sport perfect. 1, it definitely fulfills the slow and tiring criteria. You're going to have to build your momentum up over a series of wind puffs. Also, I think I want to make this the only way that the players are able to move the ball towards the opposing goal. Because if you can just like grab the ball and chuck it, I don't think anyone has enough reaction time with any form of transportation 0G to actually like stop you from just throwing it directly at the goal and scoring. So it would be moving too fast if you could throw it. So you can only air puff the ball towards the opposing goal. So you have to really like figure out how to build enough momentum to score a goal here. You can use it offensively too. You can use your air puffs to go while you're going one direction to push other players other directions as well. You can rob them of their momentum. You can use it to pop the water walls around you if you like. You can use this air puff to do other things as well. Also, and I think the little cherry on top is that it's also a safety feature because there's still going to be water around. It's not like you're going to have no water on your face. And if you get too much, you just puff on your own face and boom, water's gone. You're safe. You don't have to worry about drowning. So that's pretty much what it is. It's just you're in a sphere, you're going through these honeycombed walls of water, and you're just puffing around with your little Airzuka. And that is how you play water polo in zero gravity.
So it's not like because when I was first imagining this, I was imagining like an orb full of water, but it's not full of water. It's just the outside is water.
So imagine like a bubble wand where you have like a perimeter with like a film between like, around it. So like most of those sections would be full. So yeah, you would be in the air generally, but you'd be like in a series of like small hexagonish rooms where you'd have like you'd have like 5 or 6 different ways you could go in the sphere that would either have a water wall or, have a destroyed water wall already. So you'd be like moving around the sphere that way.
Okay, but you won't be like in the water the whole time. You'll be going through water walls.
Yeah, and the water walls will break up, and so there'll be, some amount of water around. But yeah, generally you're going to be not underwater. You don't have to like breathe. I'm trying to avoid the drown problem.
Okay, that's a cool, unique take on it.
All my water polo sports are unique. I take pride in that. Chris, what did you do for yours?
So the question that I looked back on was from episode 17. It was, what if all buildings were made of Legos? So in this episode, I think Ben talked about like, what if all buildings turned into Legos overnight and like everything would just break? And that's what he talked about. I think Marcus tried to like build an aquarium for some reason with Legos.
Yeah, I built an aquarium because I knew that would not work very well.
And what I did for my answer was I tried to design a house of Legos, like structurally, and see how that would work. And I say tried because I definitely made mistakes.
Yeah, I'm also going to throw in here before, Chris, you get any further. Chris screwed this up the first time. I'm going to see how he does this time. Chris should not have screwed this up either time because you are an actual factual structural engineer.
I wasn't licensed before. Now I am licensed.
Yes, I just had the I just had like the 8 years of education, and now I got 8 years of education plus like 1 more year.
Yeah. So like one of the main mistakes I did actually wasn't really like a mistake. I sort of intentionally just made it simpler because I didn't want to spend the time to do it. Was that I said that the columns for the house were all you need was like 6 4x4 bricks, like Lego bricks. So like 6 wide and 6 long of those 4x4 Lego bricks for your columns. And obviously this is wrong because like normal houses, the columns are bigger than that for normal structural materials.
Yup.
And the reason why it worked in my calculations is because I basically just ignored all horizontal loads and only looked at vertical loads. But there's like wind and there's like earthquake loads and there's other loads. So I basically just did it for simplicity because I only spent like 2 hours doing it. And I actually never got a chance to like acknowledge this mistake like on the show. I might have mentioned it in like a behind the scenes episode or something. I don't remember. I definitely didn't mention it on any of the main episodes. So now I get to.
The deep guilt coming out 135 episodes later.
Yeah. And we joked about me trying to do this again with my license. I'm actually not going to try to redo the calcs.
Wait, what?
Mainly because I'm kind of lazy and I don't really trust myself to not mess it up again. And also because I listened to episode 17 and my portion of the episode was with the calcs was actually pretty boring. It was a lot of numbers and it was hard to follow and I just didn't like it. I'll just say that the outcome of that episode is basically that the design was pretty ridiculous. So like, I think we said that we could use glue for it. So we ignored all the seams in the Legos. It would just be like the material of the Lego. And if I did that, then my final design had 4-foot thick slabs of Legos for the floors. And that's a very, very thick slab for a floor. So, yeah, it was a ridiculous design that combined with the tiny columns. And in that episode, I also mentioned that they have built real Lego houses before. And those real Lego houses used wooden frames because structurally it wouldn't be able to hold itself up.
Such a scam. Such a scam.
I know. And then they just used the Legos as like the aesthetics of it.
It's like Lego wallpaper. I was very excited for that special and very disappointed at that special.
And the reason that it wouldn't be able to stand up is basically just because of the material that the Lego is made out of. It's made out of ABS plastic, which isn't very strong as a building material. So I wanted to look at, instead of designing a new house with just normal Legos, I wanted to look at new materials for Legos and see if anything worked better. And Lego has actually been, Lego the company has actually been testing new materials. They're actually looking for more sustainable materials because they've been using the same ABS plastic for a really long time. They've been testing plastic recycled from bottles and stuff. And for their materials, they say that it needs to meet their safety and durability requirements because I guess they want all their new Legos to be able to fit together with Legos that are 30 years old. It can't deteriorate and change dimensions or else it'll mess things up. And actually, the ability to snap to other pieces is what they call clutch power.
Oh my god.
I don't know why they gave it such a weird name. But they emphasize the importance of the material being able to be molded to an accuracy of a hair width, because if the margin of error is any bigger than that, then it'll affect the ability to snap together. And it just ensures that new Legos work with old Legos. And they said that they haven't really found an existing sustainable material that meets their standards, so they're gonna need to probably create a new material, is what they said. And I don't think they've found anything yet. But this just shows that it's not the material that defines the Lego, it's the shape of the Lego and the ability to snap together is what makes a Lego a Lego. It can be any material. And to highlight this even further, there is actually an official gold Lego brick made by the Lego company. So they're actually very rare. It's a 2x4 Lego brick made with 25 grams of solid 14 karat gold. These were actually given out between 1979 and 1981. They were given to very select Lego employees and partners just based on if they did something really special for the company or something, or they're an important person or something. And I think I read they had 10 of these or maybe fewer than 10, but each one was worth around $15,000.
We can't even build anything with those. What are you gonna do with 10 2x4s? Oh, I built a wall.
Yeah, you build a wall. I don't know, you could be creative.
Ah, I built a weird wall.
And then there's also a Kickstarter by some guy that got funded in 2020 for metal Lego bricks. So he made them out of all different types of metal. I think there was aluminum, brass, titanium, copper, and iron. And they actually look pretty cool. I went to the Kickstarter page and the picture, he printed the table of content, the table, what's it called? What's the table called? Elements table?
The periodic table of elements?
Periodic table of elements, yeah.
There we go.
He printed the square from that on each one. It looks very fancy. This actually got funded, and he said that he developed a method to manufacture these with a margin of error less than 0.01 millimeters, which is very precise, and that's exactly what Lego is looking for, is precise. So These are very expensive. They're not as expensive as the gold Legos, but each of these bricks is around $200 per 2x4 brick. And the titanium one's a little more expensive. It's $329 per brick. These are obviously stronger than plastic, but they are very expensive. I wanted to look at something else, so I looked at wood, because we use wood for construction a lot. Can we make wood Legos? And yes, you can. There are a lot of wood. There are not official Legos, but there are a lot of unofficial wooden Legos on like eBay and Etsy and stuff like that. So it's definitely possible. And the strength of the wood would probably just depend on the type of wood you use. It varies a lot depending on what species of tree you're using. But you could find a stronger wood. And instead of using like a 2x4 brick like we've been looking at for this whole time, I feel like that's not the ideal piece to use. I wanted to like see what the largest official Lego piece is. The largest one I could find was, it's like all the pieces have ID numbers. So the ID number for this one is 30072, and it is a 12 by 24 brick. So it's like a flat piece with 12 little pegs and then 24 pegs in the other direction. And it's about 3.7 inches by 7.5 inches. And then it's like 1.1 centimeters deep. So I'm thinking that like, if you want to build something with this, instead of like building just one on top of the other, you'd stagger them. So like, it's basically overlapping half of the other piece. Sort of like if you're laying out like bricks, then you like overlap them. And we said that glue is allowed. So you could glue these together, you'd attach them, and then you glue them. And what I'm basically making is a glue laminated timber beam, which is an actual thing that we use in construction. It's a little different. So glue laminated timber beams, they're like, you take a really, really long, thin, like plank of wood, and you like glue them all together. So there's like layers of wood stacked on top, and they're all held together by glue. That's basically what we're doing. It's a little different for us because we're not using like really long pieces, but it's still sort of similar. We might need to make them a little beefier just because there are like more seams and stuff. But I think you could basically make like a construction equivalent with this. And since we're using wood, and since like all the real life Lego houses use wood frames, I was thinking, why don't we just make our wood frame out of these wood Legos? And yes, it'll have a wood frame, but it'll still all be Legos, and it'll look like Legos because we just put normal Legos outside of the wood frame, and we're good. And I don't have to have ridiculous dimensions for my house. It'll just look normal.
I'm trying so hard right now to imagine this in a way where you're like, hey, I built my house out of Legos, and I came over very excited to look at it, and you showed me these glue laminate beams, and you're like, hey, look, yeah, see, they got studs on top.
They're Legos.
They're Legos. I'm trying to find a way in which I'm not incredibly disappointed when I see
They're
it.
technically Legos.
The best, technically correct. The best kind of correct.
Yeah, so that is my answer. That's how I corrected my mistake.
We'll try again another 130-something episodes.
Ben, what did you do?
So we did in episode 114 a science fair grab bag, and in that episode we did 3 answers. We did the good old volcano made with whatever you make those volcanoes with.
Baking soda and vinegar.
Baking soda and vinegar. There you go. Thank you. One of your answers was just potato on this spreadsheet.
It's potato charge, like the charge of
yes, yeah, the electrical charge from a potato.
Potato battery.
That's right, potato battery. And then I did Coke and Mentos and tried to make a rocket ship. And after, I think basically immediately after we recorded it, I realized that we should have done Spaghetti Bridge, which is of course a classic science project from school. So
we thought so long about what is the obvious third science fair project. Like a week we were talking about, like, there's got to be a third one that's really obvious that we're missing, and couldn't come up with it.
We tried so hard.
We settled for Mentos and Coke.
Yeah,
that was our settle answer.
Exactly. Which, I mean, I'm glad we did it, but I can't believe we missed Spaghetti Bridge. Anyway, a Spaghetti Bridge, the idea is you have some gap and you're supposed to make a bridge entirely out of spaghetti to bridge that gap, and then you see basically how much weight it can support. So I wanted to find some actual like direct rules for this, and I found a world championship, the RECCS World Championship in spaghetti building, organized by a Hungarian university, the University of Abuda. I'm not going to pronounce that correctly. It's a competition where college students come in teams and make both bridges and the more vague structures, which as far as I can tell are kind of more like tower type situations. They did have rules laid out. The pasta must be made solely of flour and water, optionally with eggs. It can be homemade, but it has to be just standard pasta. You can use adhesive, but only to bind together at the joints of your structure. All they say is, and I quote, any appropriate glue can be used, which is kind of vague, but whatever. And you cannot strengthen the pasta by coating it in glue or gluing together like parallel pieces of pasta. The only place you can use that glue is on the joints to keep it together.
Making your own pasta for this competition seems so wild to me. I love it.
It very much, it's not like like a big prize money thing or anything. It's something that college students do. So it's not like that involved in the rules. It felt very much like, come on guys, it's pasta. You get the idea.
Yeah, my pasta recipe is, flour, water, Portland cement.
Yep. And the bridges had to be between 1 meter and 1.3 meters long, no taller than 0.6 meters, and it had to have a 5 centimeter wide pathway that you could put basically like a little tiny like boxcar across was kind of the idea. And importantly, it couldn't weigh more than 1 kilogram. In terms of the results that they saw in this competition, by the way, the most successful one, and the one I've seen claimed was the world's strongest, although this seems very like specific, so I don't know how precise that claim is, was from 2013. There was a Hungarian team that had a bridge that weighed 999 grams and held 570.3 grams, which is pretty impressive. I will note, by the way, if you Google for this, the news article that talks about it says 570.3 kilograms, which is clearly not right. You cannot make a 1 kilogram spaghetti bridge that can hold 570 times its weight. I'm sorry.
I don't know, Ben. I don't know.
I will also say my other assumption that was an incorrect statement on the article is that in the results on the page, all of the weights are unlabeled, but that includes the weight of the bridge itself, which I know from the rules has to be less than 1 kilogram. So it's sadly not insanely strong building material spaghetti. Doesn't work. So the problem you have when trying to scale up a spaghetti bridge from like this science experiment situation is that you can't just scale it up and have it work the same way. Because of something we've talked about many times, which is the cube square law, which is when something gets larger, the surface area increases to the square of that size increase, and the volume increases to the cube of that size increase, which also means the mass will as well. And what's going to wind up happening is that if you try to make a full-size bridge out of spaghetti, it's not going to be able to hold itself up. Just the weight of the pasta will be too much to even hold the pasta up. I could have conceivably done some sort of calculation to prove this. Instead, because I did not want to do that.
See, I'm not the only lazy one.
Okay. I'm just going to say I had to pretty much go from scratch in figuring out the structural integrity of spaghetti because, man, I searched for it. What I do have is the world's largest pasta structure, according to like Guinness, which was in 2011, a group of students from the Islamic Azad University in Iran used roughly 33,000 meters of spaghetti to make a 103 kilogram, 24 meter long, 5 meter tall, 5.5 meter wide structure, which is certainly not big enough to, be a like full size bridge. And that's just as a structure that can support itself. That appears to be, sort of the max because no one is, I'm sure that you might be able to get a little bit bigger, but not to like a huge scale, and certainly not to the point where you could support a vehicle with it. I also like, by the way, in the article I saw about that, it noted that while the structure was built completely as spaghetti, in the future, similar structures can be built out of other materials, such as aluminum, which, yes, is true. That is a thing you could do, build things out of not spaghetti. So we're going to just rule out using literal spaghetti to build a bridge. Could you make a brick out of pasta? Hypothetically, yes, right? Pasta is just flour and water and sometimes eggs. And conceivably, you could make a pasta dough, make a brick of it, and put it in a brick press the way they used to, to press like clay into bricks, and heat it until it dries out to the point where it is solid. Technically, yes, you could do that. The problem you're going to run into, there's a couple. One, pasta is far more brittle than clay. I do not have a source for that. I think that one's self-evident. So, there's a lot of issues with that. But bigger than that, your problem is going to be water. pasta will absorb water just anytime it's in contact with water. It obviously goes much faster if it's boiling water, like you're actually cooking it. But if you put dry pasta in room temperature water, it will go soft like it was in boiling water in a couple of hours. That's actually a way that you can save energy when you are cooking pasta while you're camping, is just soak your pasta in water first, and then it'll cook faster because it doesn't have to soften while it's cooking. Fun fact, life advice.
Could you just soak it and then eat it like that without cooking it?
You could, but it would be raw flour. Well, yeah, it would be raw flour, which I think is weird for your digestive system in some way. I don't remember exactly what happens, but it's not great. But if you conceivably made pasta bricks and made a pasta bridge out of pasta bricks, when it got wet, over time, it would eventually just sort of get all jiggly and doughy again, which is not something you'd really look for in a bridge generally. And conveniently, most bridges are very close to, if not directly on top of, water. So even ignoring rain, you're still going to have a very humid environment. It's just not going to work out well. So long story short, you're not going to be able to use your good old-fashioned flour and water pasta to make a bridge. So let's go slightly more outside the box and stretch our definition a little bit. Let's talk about nuclear pasta.
What?
So, nuclear pasta is a theoretical substance that makes up the crust of a neutron star. So, when a star collapses, if it's at a certain mass, where it's between 1 and 3 solar masses, so 1 to 3 times the mass of our sun, the core of the star will collapse and crush together all of that matter into an incredibly dense neutron star. If it's bigger than that, it just becomes a black hole instead. That's kind of the density we're talking about here. So it's like you're not quite dense enough to get a black hole, but you get the next best thing. And this nuclear pasta, what happens on the crust of this neutron star is the nuclear attraction and Coulomb repulsion forces that act on the neutrons and protons are at the same magnitude, which means that they form these complicated pasta-like structures that have fun names like spaghetti, lasagna, gnocchi, and my personal favorites, anti-spaghetti and anti-gnocchi.
Come on. You're making it up at this point.
I am not making up anti-spaghetti and anti-gnocchi. Those are real.
I tried to Google anti-gnocchi and it just came up as, is gnocchi anti-inflammatory?
Hold on, I'm putting the fun scientific diagram I found in our chat. It doesn't help our listeners, unfortunately, but this is the diagram that shows the 7 structures of nuclear pastas: gnocchi, spaghetti, waffles, lasagna, defects, anti-spaghetti, and anti-gnocchi. So this substance is incredibly dense and incredibly strong. Theoretically, it's around 10 billion times stronger than steel. So obviously, if you had nuclear pasta, you could easily make an incredibly sound bridge out of it, with one small problem. That problem being that neutron stars, as I mentioned, are incredibly dense, which means that everything in a neutron star becomes, much like in a, the similar black hole situation, much, much heavier than it would anywhere else in the universe. So the sort of, not really figure, but rough figure I saw was that a sugar cube's worth of matter would weigh more than 1 billion tons inside a neutron star, which is roughly the weight of Mount Everest. So a tiny, tiny bit of nuclear pasta would somehow wind up on Earth, because it would suddenly not have that environment that would allow it to stay so dense. It would basically explode like a nuclear bomb. And that's for that tiny, tiny bit of matter. So if you somehow had a bridge that just popped into existence made out of nuclear pasta, I did not do any actual math on this.
I don't think it's required.
My assumption is that it would be quite a big explosion that would probably, I don't know, tear the planet into several pieces.
In twain!
Yeah, at least. If not thrain. So I guess the answer is you probably shouldn't make bridges out of pasta, whether terrestrial or nuclear, because it's not going to end well on some scale of disaster.
Oh, we blew up the world.
We blew up the world with pasta.
But Ben, that world has so many cool facts. Like, I fact-checked that bridges couldn't hold that much, and they fucking can. That was not a typo, Ben.
Bullshit.
I'm reading this high school thing right now. So these kids, this is a totally different site, totally different school. they weigh less than a pound. Like the winning one was 10.85 ounces. To pass, it needs to hold 25 pounds. Decently constructed ones can support 40 or 50 pounds. The all-time record is 795 pounds.
Well, all right then.
So you can build a 1 pound bridge that holds... Yeah, you can build a 1 pound thing that holds 800 pounds, and it'll be made out of spaghetti. And that is why engineering is cool.
I stand corrected then. I stand corrected.
Live fact check. We don't have to do a throwback episode for it.
Nailed it. Jesus, those Hungarians are insane.
All right, and with that hot fact check and exploding the world, I mean, I guess that brings us to our would you rather question. Ben, are you ready for a would you rather here?
I am ready.
All right, set the stage. You are world leader. You are in charge of everything. Your dictatorship has ruled the world. You are in power. You can make decisions. But you have this decision before you to save the planet. Would you rather eliminate paper products or eliminate emissions to save the environment?
Oh.
What does eliminate emissions mean? Does that mean, like, we can't do things that emit?
Let's say no fossil fuels.
Okay. So it's not like we still consume it and it just doesn't emit.
Because I was going to say, technically also, like, we emit carbon dioxide when we breathe, and I don't really want to eliminate that one.
Yeah, that's like, careful what you wish for.
Yeah. And the monkey's paw, one more finger curls down. I feel like with regards to paper products, paper is something you can recycle relatively well, right? Like, I know that different things recycle to different degrees. Is paper one of the ones that actually recycles well or no?
I'm going to say the answer is both of these save the world. You don't have to worry about which one's more eco-friendly.
Okay, so both of these are like a final solution that solves everything.
Yeah, your experts have come in. Either of these two things will save the world. It'll keep it under, 1.5 degree warming.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it's just more annoying to deal with not having paper, not having fossil fuels, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm of the belief that we should get rid of fossil fuels anyway, so personally, this one seems pretty clear to me.
But, like, I feel like fossil fuels affect a lot more things that we use. Like, we won't be able to use a lot more things.
In the short term, yes, but mostly because most of our infrastructure is designed around fossil fuels. So, it's time to drop some knowledge that I just know off the dome here. One of the big issues with power generation is converting from fossil fuels into electric power. Getting something that's more directly electric, like solar power, is actually way more efficient in that regard. The problem is just that our infrastructure relies on that, combustion process where you lose like 80% of the energy in a thing before you even start turn a wheel or whatever.
Well, and solar panel, it doesn't work at night, so that's a problem.
That is a technically true statement.
Sorry, I just knew that would infuriate you a little bit.
Yep. Yep.
But then we won't have lights when we need them.
We won't. What's the use in it? We don't need solar power the day the sun's up there. Who cares? We can already see.
I also feel like this question, though, is an overnight thing. So, like, sure, long term we'd be able to adapt, but right now our infrastructure is relying on it, and, like, if it happened overnight, then we'd be screwed.
If it's an overnight thing, you have to get rid of paper because, like, there's going to be a rush on bidets, and that's your big consequence, I guess. But, like, what's the timeline where it becomes the fossil fuels one?
Let's say it's got to happen it's got to happen quickly, like ASAP. It can go as fast as you go. Again, you are ruler, dictator of the world, and your people are going to be dealing with this.
I mean, I feel like if that's the case, you unfortunately do have to go with paper products. Invest in bidet stocks first. I already made that joke. I don't care.
I can do what I want. I'm the dictator.
Exactly. Dictators can retell jokes.
Bow to me. Laugh again, peasants.
Have you ever used a bidet? I haven't.
I actually have not somehow.
I also have not used a bidet. I want to, though. I think I want to get one.
You're gonna buy one?
I mean, they're pretty cheap.
They're not that expensive, right? They're like $100 or something.
No, there's definitely ones that are cheaper than that aren't like standalone ones. That are ones that you just like hook in to your toilet bowl.
Yeah, you just like connect it. You can buy an accessory.
Now I'm like, let's see, hold on. Bidet, Amazon.
All right, we need to not go into an actual adult conversation about bidets and costs.
We probably should.
The convenience of installing them.
All right, I see a crappy one for $40 on Amazon. So there you go.
You don't want a crappy bidet. It's supposed to be uncrappy. That's the whole point of it.
Hey, that's 4.5 stars on Amazon. So, I mean, that's all I'm saying.
So it sounds like this would you rather is purely based on the time frame.
Yeah. I mean, at least unless I'm not thinking of something here, right? Like,
Yeah, I guess, yeah, the issue with the premise is that paper products is just like a life inconvenience where I lose a bunch of stuff that I can't have anymore. Emissions is like, okay, there's a societal change, but once things are running on alternate fuel sources, it really doesn't impact me at all.
So I will say, in terms of societal change, the one big thing with paper products that I'm not making jokes about toilet paper, that would, I would assume, include like cardboard, which would have a lot of ramifications, but I feel like they're...
I mean, I think we could replace cardboard still.
Yeah, more replaceable than fossil fuels, unfortunately.
Everything's plastic. We saved the planet, but tripled our plastic output.
But wait, don't those all use petroleum?
Oh man, that's a much better would you rather. Remove paper or plastic products. That'd be so good. I should have done that one. I should have modified this one.
Well, now we know for next time.
On a throwback, would you rather?
All right, let's do our final determinations. I think we've hit the bottom of the barrel here on this would you rather.
Yeah.
I'll start. I usually don't start, but I'll start. I'm gonna say, get rid of the paper products. I'm a big dictator. I'll let the world burn. I'll just ride the narcissism to the grave.
I also say get rid of the paper, just because the time frame thing. I think that's what this question is.
I'm going to throw a wrench in this. I'm a dictator. I'm going to say get rid of fossil fuels because I personally want to do that, and I'm a dictator, so I'll be fine. Y'all can figure it out.
All right. Awesome. So, if you would like to pay tribute to your 3 overlord dictators that are definitely not going to have to duel to the death immediately after this show to determine who is actually in charge of the world, you can do so directly with your hard-earned cash money that you tilled the fields for by going onto our Patreon. www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals, and you can put your dollars into the vault that we dive into that's full of money all the time, like a Scrooge McDuck, except in charge of the whole world instead of just, I don't know, does Scrooge McDuck have a business empire? I don't know how he makes his money.
How did Scrooge McDuck make his money?
Don't know.
I
That'll be a
don't
question
know.
for next time. You can do that to help support the show out of the goodness of your hearts and your loyalty to your overlords, or you can do it because you want that sweet, sweet extra bonus content that we release each month for our patrons exclusively. Every month we release a bonus episode with all sorts of different things in it. They're cool. Check them out. You get access to all of them for just a singular dollar. No tiers, no nothing, just one singular dollar. If you enjoy the show and you don't want to give us money directly, you can always leave us a review. That helps us grow the show. Or if you want to be part of the show directly, send us questions. absurdhypotheticals@gmail.com. You can just email us a question straight to that email address, and if we like it, we will let you know, and it can be right on the show, and that's a really cool way to be involved. But in any case, if you don't want to do any of those things, or if you've already done all the 3 of those things, you can join us next week, where we answer the following question: which robot would win in a fight?